Forza Motorsport is a breath of fresh air. Here's why. So recently I've been playing Forza Motorsport, and it's the first traditional racing game that I've played in probably going on 8 years now. In fact, I actually don't think I've ever really gotten into traditional racing games. And that makes me a massive casual in this series. So this isn't a full review, this is just a little brief impressions video of Forza Motorsport from the perspective of a casual. So if you're a casual yourself, you're probably going to be more interested in this sort of review than if you're a seasoned motorsport veteran. If that's the case, I'd recommend that you watch a proper review that's not just looking at parts of the game that are going to interest casuals and people who aren't big racing fans. But for you guys that aren't huge racing fans, you just want to play a racing game, have a bit of fun, and just go on a track in a car that looks cool, this is probably going to be the video for you. In that case, subscribe and enjoy the video. So the first thing that really grabbed me about Forza Motorsport was how much customization was involved in just the selection of your difficulty. I think that's one thing that massively made me think maybe this is the game for me. Put it this way, in other racing games, I am not good. As you can probably see from the screen right now, my racing skills are pretty awful, so most racing games are generally pretty hostile towards me. This game though allows full customization of not only your own driving assists but also the difficulty of the AI, and that is from level 1 to level 10, not just easy, normal and hard. The levels of AI here are actually pretty advanced. Put it this way, level 1 I found very easy, so I then shifted up to level 2, which I then found at least slightly easy, but like more of like a, I don't know, put it this way, okay, a better way of putting it is if level 1 was like a default in like, I don't know, like Fortnite, level 2 was maybe somebody who played for like a few weeks. Number 3 I would say is probably like the normal difficulty for a casual like me, because I found myself struggling to get to a podium finish, which is exactly where I wanted it to be. So for now I've left it on difficulty 3. I also found that there was massive amounts of customization in the controls, but we'll talk about that in the next section. I'm just really impressed as per now as to how much customization that Forza allows you, even if you've never played a racing game before. I have basically avoided most racing games in, well, probably for the last 5-ish years, just because I've always found them to be quite difficult and I'm always not very good at them. But Forza Motorsport really does feel like a game that was designed with people like me in mind, and that's really important for me. And for any casuals out there that are watching this video, that's also probably quite important to you. So I would say that if you're a casual, not only this section of the review, but the next section of the review are probably the things that are going to sway you the most. So let's talk about controls as the next section of why the difficulty in this game is so adaptable and so great. The controls in Forza Motorsport are totally customizable, judging by exactly how confident you are in your own ability and how much of a simulator you want this to be versus an arcade racer. And in reality, the pendulum can swing as far in either way as you want it to. For example, if you're really hardcore and you fancy switching your own gears, no smart steering whatsoever, and it's all your own controls, you can totally be free to do that and have your experience as a proper simulation and experience the game exactly the way you want to. But if you're more like me and you're much more of a fan of an arcade racer that has all the looks of a simulation, you can pretty much make this game drive itself. And I don't use the easiest controls because I found them slightly too overwhelming, because I was finding that the car was steering and braking by itself when I wanted full control. But when I found exactly what my control scheme that I felt like using was, that's what I used, and that's what I felt comfortable with, and it made the game so much better for me. Now, all I have is a slight steering guide, because sometimes I just go wildly off track because I get too caught up in how good the cars look and I completely forget that I'm actually supposed to be driving this car. And I also have a little bit of braking assist as well, because sometimes I forget that you actually can't hold down the brake if you put it all the way, so I just let it, I can hold the brake down and it automatically pulse itself, so I don't get, brake locks and things like that. And I think that these features are incredibly useful, especially if you're a casual, just because if you don't want to experience the full simulation, you don't have to, but you can get all the graphics and all the races and all the experience and the feeling of racing a fast car without having to deal with all the fiddly bits. And to be honest, that's exactly what you get here. It's fantastic. And it does feel like a breath of fresh air, because I've previously felt that racing games are almost inhospitable to people like me that aren't actually very good at them. But this racing game feels like something that was built with people like me in mind, and that's why I love it. So let's go to where the real showcase of Forza Motorsport comes, and that's in the graphics. So, graphics. Take one look at the gameplay in front of you, and you can see exactly how stunning it looks from an outsider's perspective. Jump into the game, and it somehow looks even better. And that's thanks to the brand new engine that Forza Motorsport brings to the table. It doesn't actually use the same engine as Forza Horizon 5, which used the old engine that's been used for a few years now. This is a completely brand new engine that enables stuff like on-track ray tracing, and enables the ray tracing to be broken down to different stages, and that's what enables Forza Motorsport to include a performance mode that also includes ray tracing. This performance mode actually doesn't lose any performance in frame drops whatsoever. I think it's probably just a little bit of upscaling as opposed to just direct frame rate, which is fantastic, because playing at a solid 60 FPS has always been important for me in playing a racing game. And it's why I avoided games such as Need for Speed Heat, and I like my games at 60 FPS. I know that there's been lots of discourse around that at the moment, but for me personally, going back to 30 is so difficult. It's why I play Starfield on PC rather than on Xbox. Anyway, there's also features such as weather, which actually have a massive effect on the track, because say it's raining, you will feel that difference, and I mean that as somebody who has no experience of this at all, but you can definitely tell that the weather has a massive effect on your driving. And that's actually one thing that's a big deal in motorsport. Every single car feels different, and every car feels different individually as it's being upgraded. If you go off the track and get upgrades applied for you, and then you go back on the track with those upgrades, you will absolutely feel that difference. It will come, I don't even know how to explain it really, but it will come in a form of just feeling faster, because speed is so well translated onto this game that you can really tell when you're going fast compared to when you're going slow, and speed is just so well displayed here. Just because you can tell that you're going fast even at 50 miles an hour, because imagine you were in a real car. 50 miles an hour would still feel pretty quick. In this game it's no different, but nowadays 50 miles an hour doesn't feel like going like slug pace. You can feel the difference, but it's not, you don't feel like you're not going at any sort of speed when you're going around a corner. And that's great, because for me in the past, racing games, especially like Horizon, when you're going at anything below like 70 miles an hour, it basically just feels like you're going nowhere fast at all. Even though 70 miles an hour is still pretty quick. In this game, speed is perfect. Anyway, so speaking of upgrades, let's go to this new progression system and see exactly how it's been deployed in the new Forza game, as opposed to the ones of the old. So the Forza games of old, especially Horizon, were pretty much just fulfillers of your every racing fantasy. You were given pretty much any car you want, and they came at a very quick pace, and you could upgrade them pretty much however you wanted, assuming that you had the credits for them. That's not the case in motorsport, and it's actually quite nice to see from someone like me who has no idea what they're doing when it comes to upgrading cars. And I know that a lot of race game purists have hated this system, and it's why it's now at a mixed rating on Steam, but for me personally, I actually love the way that this has been done, because it's not too overwhelming. Basically, every car has a level that will increase slowly as you race with it, and I know this feels slightly grindy to some, but I like using one car for a little bit until I've gotten it to a decent level, and then I move on to the next. So for someone like me, this works perfectly, and it may even fit for you if you're also a casual like me. And basically, you can upgrade your car every level, and you unlock new parts of your car every single time you level up. And you can either choose to deploy those upgrades yourself, or you can choose an assistant to effectively just upgrade your car for you and make it the best it can be for that level. It'll always give you a pretty balanced loadout of how your car works, and it won't swing too far in either direction depending on exactly what you want. So if you want something a bit more specialised, you should definitely do it yourself, but if you've got no idea what you're doing, like me, this system is actually fantastic, because it means I don't have to worry too much, but I always know that my car will be getting better. I also love that through the career mode there's a consistent influx of credits, so that I can basically afford any car that I'd want in realistic proportions anyway, because I'm not going to be buying supercars right now anyway, because I'm going from 0 to 100 pretty slowly. But that's just because I prefer more of a car PG experience than an all-out arcade, you can have whatever you want whenever you want sort of way of playing. So that's what I think about the progression system, and my favourite part of the progression system is actually just how much customization seems to matter. Let me explain what I mean. So I'm not out here saying that in games like Horizon, which by the way I did play, but when I said that I hadn't played any racing games, I meant mainly just straight up races as opposed to open worlds. I've dabbled in Horizon 5 and played a little bit of Horizon 4, and one thing that I found with those games is because we always had so many cars available from the very first second that you started that game up, there wasn't really any point in going in depth with customization with many of them, just because you never really felt you using them for long enough to actually get to know them, and therefore it wasn't really worth putting the time and effort into customizing it. With Motorsport, this is a bit different, because you spend a lot more time with each car in order to upgrade it, and therefore customizing it actually makes them feel much more yours, and it's a much more satisfying process than it was in Horizon, in my opinion anyway. And I just feel like it's much more valuable to customise your car here because you spend more time with that specific car anyway, so why not? Those are all my favourite things about Forza Motorsport anyway, and I just think that this, of all the races that you can get at the moment, is probably the most openly accessible to casuals. That's because it guides you through the game and it guides you through your experience. If it's your first racer, you are free to start off with the easiest difficulty with very heavily assisted controls, and Forza will take you through that, and it will honour every single want and need that you have to make sure that you have a smooth racing experience. Once that becomes second nature, you can then go up in difficulty, put the assisting down, and you can just continue to evolve in your racing journey, and it makes you better and better as it goes on, and this happens very naturally. This, in my opinion, makes Forza Motorsport the most accessible racer for casuals that I've played, and I actually want to know what you guys think. If you're a racing fan, how accessible is Forza Motorsport compared to the average racing game? And I'm not talking open world or even like stuff like Need for Speed, I'm talking very much racing simulator. So how is this compared to Gran Turismo? You let me know down in the comments below because I'm genuinely interested to see how you found this compared to the others. I know that for one thing, this is a lot less exploitative than games like Gran Turismo 7 seem, at least from an outsider's perspective, just because they don't have any of those exploitative microtransactions involved, and that's actually one thing that I really like about Motorsport. It's not throwing microtransactions in your face instantly, but there is always an option to buy a few different ones if you really fancy. So those are my opinions on Forza Motorsport, guys. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one. In a bit, guys. Peace.